The epic poem the Argonautica, which dates all the way back to the 3rd century BC, is one of the greatest classical archetypes in fiction. It's an adventure that has it all, with a simple man with the simple name of Jason setting out with a crew of legendary heroes in search of a treasure tied to fate and the gods themselves. Along the way, he encounters impossible wonders, bone-chilling monsters, a doomed romance, and unexpected revelations about why he's on the adventure to begin with. So, I have to say, at the risk of sounding like a stereotypical old man, that it's a shame that schools don't tend to teach it anymore. The Argonautica, like most ancient myths from around the world, is an important part of our cultural history, and any generation raised without these well-worn tales of legend is missing enormous context for how we see the world as it is today. One man who understood this was, of course, Ray Harryhausen, who fell in love with the Argonautica and other stories like it at a very young age. Therefore, after 2 decades of honing his craft and becoming a master in his own style of storytelling, he knew what he wanted to do next. He wanted to bring the ancient tale of Jason and the Argonauts to life, in order to excite children of the next generation and remind adults of his own what fiction makes possible.
No man can tell you how to find the fleece. Is it not time you ask the gods?
The exiled son of an overthrown king, Jason sets out to avenge himself upon the usurper Pelias, but first he must undertake a bold quest to claim the legendary Golden Fleece from a tree at the edge of the world. Overseen by the gods themselves, Jason amasses the strongest sea vessel and the greatest crew in all the land, the Argo and the Argonauts, and they set out to face multiple dangers and risk the ire of the mighty Zeus. Can Jason claim the fleece, or will he and his Argonauts be fated to die in its pursuit?
Following the success of the 1959 US release of Hercules, an Italian sword and sandal film starring Steve Reeves, the American market was flooded with similar imports, movies dubbed pepla by European critics. Eager to capitalize on this, Columbia Pictures turned to the dynamic duo of producer Charles Schneer and special effects superstar Ray Harryhausen, who were riding high off the successes of The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Mysterious Island. Harryhausen wrote an outline for a film based on the Argonautica called Jason and the Golden Fleece, and he and Schneer worked with screenwriter Beverly Cross to turn it into a full screenplay, with some additional help from scientist-turned-screenwriter Jan Reed. They tried to stick as close to the classical tale as they could, but they did make a lot of changes to suit the needs of the time, including turning the zombie-like Spartoi into skeletons and not revealing that Medea is a witch, a key point they planned to revisit in a potential sequel that would address all of the unresolved plot threads. There were also some ideas in the original script that they would have to abandon for one reason or another, including an encounter with Scylla and Charybdis, and another with the three-headed Cerberus. Schneer and Harryhausen considered filming Jason and the Golden Fleece in Greece or Yugoslavia, but ultimately settled on Italy, home to those pepla movies that were all the rage back in the United States. They also hired the workhorse Don Chaffee to direct, due in part to his familiarity with period adventures like Disney's 3-part television movie The Prince and the Pauper. Then, in late September 1961, and with a relatively high budget of around $3.5 million, cameras started rolling on Jason and the Golden Fleece. Since the movie was a British production, the majority of the main cast is made up of British actors. However, after briefly considering a young Terence Stamp, the lead role of Jason was given to an American, the St. Louis native Todd Armstrong. This would prove to be Armstrong's biggest role, but I guess his accent was too American, because his dialogue was entirely dubbed over by English actor Tim Turner. It's pretty weird to me though, because Jason's dubbed voice still sounds American, or at least like an Englishman trying his best to do an American accent.
The fewer who go, the less can get caught. Now what's the fewest you can think of?
One, of course.
Right. I accept your advice.
The female lead, Medea, who doesn't even appear until 69 minutes into a 104-minute movie, is played by another American, Nancy Kovac, who viewers of this channel will probably recognize as Nona from the classic Star Trek episode A Private Little War. However, like Armstrong, her voice was dubbed over by a Brit, this time Eva Haddon. I still don't understand why the two leads were dubbed over, it's distracting at best, but at least Haddon sounds British.
Where have you come from?
Thessaly.
But that's the other side of the world.
Probably the most talked about casting decision was Nigel Green as Hercules. Harryhausen wanted to avoid the stereotypical strongmen who usually played the character, most notably the aforementioned Steve Reeves, because he felt Hercules was more well-rounded than just raw strength. While many critics back then didn't like this decision, I personally think Nigel Green's Hercules steals every scene he's in, and his departure halfway through the film is the most gut-wrenching part. Other notable actors include Lawrence Nesmith as Argus, Niall McGuinness as Zeus, future Poseidon Jack Gwillem as King Aeetes, future Second Doctor Patrick Troughton as Phineas, future Sherlock Douglas Wilmer as Polias, Hammer veteran Michael Gwynn as Hermes, and finally, Pussy Galore herself, Honor Blackman, as Hera. Filming took place mostly in and around Palinuro, Italy, along with a few different ruins in Paestum, including one of the temples of Hera, where the filmmakers got special permission to do their work. The Argo cost a whopping $250,000 to build, and it ran on 3 large engines hidden beneath the wooden veneer. Some pickup filming was done back in England, where, after principal photography wrapped in February of 1962, Ray Harryhausen got to work as a one-man effects team on the stop-motion animation. Among his memorable creations for Jason is the giant Talos, reimagined as an homage to Sergio Leone's The Colossus of Rhodes, the harpies that endlessly torment poor Phineas, and the incredibly complicated 7-headed Hydra that guards the Golden Fleece. Still, by far the most impressive sequence is the extended skeleton fight, an evolution of the singular skeleton battle in the 7th voyage of Sinbad. Jason and his companions fight 7 skeletons in total, across multiple shots, and it reportedly took Harryhausen over 4 months to complete the entire sequence, with some full days of work only amounting to half a second of screen time. Bernard Herrmann once again returned for his 4th and final Harryhausen collaboration, and, as usual, his score is excellent. Jason and the Golden Fleece was renamed to Jason and the Argonauts just 3 months prior to its release in June of 1963, to mostly positive reviews. It was a big hit throughout Europe, in Australia, and in Japan, but it failed to do great business in North America, where it earned a respectable but disappointing $2 million in theater rentals. This probably had a lot to do with the fact that it released 1 week after Cleopatra. The movie was a financial success on the worldwide market, and would, in the years that followed, find enormous success on American television. But given its hefty price tag and the uncertainty that followed high-profile failures from a lot of Hollywood historical epics, plans for a sequel were dropped. Harryhausen still intended on finishing the story. Jason and the Argonauts was his personal favorite of all his films, but by the time sword and sandal movies were big again, he was too busy with his Sinbad sequels to give it a go. Instead, some of his ideas for the Argonauts sequel would find their way into his final film, 1981's Clash of the Titans. Yes, I plan to cover that one too, but it'll have to wait until my next Fantasy February. Now, in all deference to the great Harryhausen, if I have a favorite movie of his, It might also be this one. It has all the awe and wonder of the seventh voyage of Sinbad, along with a story rooted in antique tales for which Harryhausen shows abundant reverence. The archetypal characters and action set pieces are just small facets to a greater whole, and as such, Jason and the Argonauts hits a chord not even Harryhausen hits very often. To explain what I mean, I'm gonna have to get all academic and pretentious on you. I hope you don't mind. The main theme of the movie is about the nature of free will in a world of gods. The opening scene demonstrates this beautifully when Pelaius is told he is fated to win the battle, so he throws away his sword, only to pick it back up when it's foretold there is still danger in his future. You see, if he believes in the gods and trusts in their designs, he has no need for the sword, but he wants it anyway, which is indicative of an underlying tension throughout the entire tale of obedience versus freedom. Pelaius is given the favor of the gods, but rejects Zeus when he learns that the favor is not eternal. Similarly, Jason rejects Zeus's offer of help, which earns the gods' respect, while Phineas is a character who is brutally and mercilessly punished for daring to misuse gifts given to him by Zeus. Jason chooses to help Phineas, risking the ire of his god, and then Medea pleads to her own goddess, Hecate, so that she might find a way to do what she wants without defying her. The results of all these choices made by mortal men and women reveal the gods to be inconsistent and temperamental, as though they are indifferent to the plight of humanity. They consider the mortal world no more consequential than a board game, and as Hermes admits, they even quarrel amongst themselves over their attitudes towards people. Therefore, if the gods are no more beneficial to a man's life than the vagaries of chance, they might even be less forgiving, there is little point in following them. This is why Zeus is keenly aware that he and the rest of the gods of Mount Olympus will inevitably become irrelevant. Consider the fact that Jason arrives in Colchis to take the Colchians' gift of the gods away from them, which they believe will leave their lands wallowing in despair. This is Jason essentially taking away their religion, dragging them towards a godless future. Maybe the Golden Fleece could be seen as being representative of faith itself, something Jason lacks but yearns for, and which he can only claim by stripping it from others. It's a soothing blanket to keep the cold air of harsh reality at bay, which is why it's a literal fleece, and why it, quote, has the power to heal, unquote. Either that, or it just represents raw power, but that's a bit too pedestrian and boring for me. Either way, there is a deep vein of meaning beneath the text, a metaphysical thought experiment that dares to ask why we abandoned the gods of myth. Was this always present in the ancient tale of the Argonauts? I'm not enough of an expert in Greco-Roman mythology to answer that question, but I can say, in all the great myths of old, you can see mortal men trying to break free from the cruel and petty whims of indifferent gods. And I think that's why it's important to keep telling these stories, to keep adapting them for an ever-evolving world. Jason and the Argonauts, therefore, is more than just a special effects spectacle to entertain audiences. It's a reminder of who we are and what it means to strive for things greater than ourselves. The Golden Fleece, then, isn't the point. It's ultimately just a MacGuffin. Like how our goals are never as important as the lives we live and the monsters we vanquish trying to achieve them. And that's all for today, my fellow humans. What's your favorite movie based on Greek mythology? Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when we'll leave Harryhausen behind for a while to hear the story of a mouse, a hawk, and a wolf, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
If I meet a girl with a firm leg, a full bosom, and a warm heart, let no man try and stop me.